Chris, how would you describe the work that you do?
It sounds a little strange and a little maybe new agey, but um, I describe myself as an emotional intelligence coach, and that is kind of under the auspice that I help men get into relationships. But the biggest relationship, the most important relationship, I believe that we all have is our relationship with ourselves. And in the kind of the fruit of we're doing this emotional intelligence work is that the men I coach, they end up dating again and being relationships and being in meaningful relationships. So I kind of steered away from the more generic title of dating coach because the work that I do, as all my clients will attest, it's a lot deeper inner work, and it's no, it's quick little programs and memorize these lines or sayings or wear this cologne, and and your all your wildest dreams are going to come true. Instead, I help guys learn to really enjoy the reflection back of the man that they're seeing in the mirror, so that way they're really presenting a product, aka themselves, showcasing themselves and feeling inherently and authentically really proud of the man that they are and the man that they're becoming.
I like that a lot, especially because to me, it's always been intuitive to me that in order for you to have any kind of connection, any kind of relationship, you kind of need emotional intelligence because if
Yeah.
not, either the relationships are going to be surface level, even when it comes to friendships, or they're not going to last because there's always going to be triggering moments. And I feel that the word or the term or the concept emotional intelligence is being thrown around quite a lot. Like
Yeah.
a lot. Everyone's just talking about that person doesn't have emotional intelligence or the other person, and I know there's a lot of nuances around this, but how would Chris describe emotional intelligence, and what have you seen from the men that you have coached? Which part of the emotional intelligence they're quote unquote lacking?
Mm, yeah. Great question. Um, I would, from my vantage point, the emotional intelligence that I teach men is to, well, I guess first of all, really a lot of these guys, a lot of us is men. I just had this conversation with another gal yesterday. Is that we're not really trained on emotional intelligence as young boys. Whereas meaning interrelating with others, with ourselves, feeling our feelings, identifying things. Instead, it's always more of, we get rewarded and high five for pushing through, being a man, rubbing some dirt on it, not crying about it. So really shutting things down. And well, while that may work adequately for getting through a game or something where we have a sprained ankle, it doesn't work for long term building a long term relationship with another person. So I think there's far too many men out there, and myself formerly included. By the way, throughout this podcast, if I'm talking about guys, for any guys listening, I want you to know that I was in your shoes, may have been buried. You think you're deep in mud. I was probably up to my neck, almost suffocating, dragging myself out of the quicksand. So everything that I chat about, and I eat my own cooking, as I say. Everything I share, things I've done because I know they personally work. They worked with me and had a lot of success for it. But and then what I would say with so just really getting to know ourselves on a deeper level, so that way we can start loving and accepting our imperfections. But most importantly, and it sounds a little, I don't know, cheap, but I do think it's true that there is we do need to be our own best publicist. And in order to really understand how to represent ourselves to the outside world and to showcase who we are, that requires us truly understanding the client, in this case, ourselves, you know, forwards and backwards, scars, bruises, strengths, everything, all of the above, so that we know how to handle the curveballs that relationships are inevitably going to throw at us. And I would say the biggest, that's the second part of your question, the biggest challenge most the men that I coach have in with emotional intelligence is understanding. Well, first is getting out of their own head. They're so busy kicking their own ass and just constantly, being hard on themselves and beating themselves up. And they're in their own head, judging themselves, thinking about themselves and obsessed with themselves. So they're not able to see outwardly and have any semblance of understanding the most important thing if you want someone to engage, like a Lego being able to stick to you, is understanding, well, what are we showing? What is how are people perceiving us? And that's the yeah, I'd say those are the biggest steps I get, is just a getting guys to realize who they are, and then B, getting them to sit with it and make sense of it, and maybe even like it. Not maybe, they absolutely find something they love about it, and then being able to understand how the person they're trying to attract, generally, heterosexual men who are trying to date women, to understand, well, what's going on in their minds, because their minds are very, very, very different. Their reality, what they're seeing from their vantage point, is so incredibly different from what we see from our vantage point. I don't know about you, Daniel, but when I'm in a mood or I'm stressing or whatever, I don't see anything in front of me. I am just caught between my ears, bouncing back and forth, and it's amazing I'm able to drive my car. And like everything, I'm kind of on autopilot. And a lot of these guys are checked out, and that's why they hit me up, because they're feeling just numb, and they're not really living and feeling life, and they're not really, because they're stuck in this own self-imposed mental cage.
First of all, I love everything that you said there, and
Love how insightful you are.
let's unpack all of this. Going back to the final point you said about we are so much in our head, when we are stressed. One thing I've realized, that when we are in survival mode, when we're fight or flight, that we're stressed, either we're nervous, we're anxious, we're scared. The prefrontal cortex, how we rationalize, is just nowhere to be found, like nowhere to be found. And it's almost like what have helped me, again, I'm getting better at it, is just taking a few deep breaths. Okay, hold on, let me just zoom out
Hmm.
and pull out of the emotion and see if I can think clearly, because it is, I understand a lot of men, because I experienced this a lot in the past. Let's say that I see somebody who is attractive, or maybe I'm somewhat, or I just want to get to know her better. And I'm not talking about cold approaching at a bar. It's like, let's say we are in the same group, running group,
Hmm.
hiking group, book club, whatever.
Hmm.
And I want to just have a conversation, and I already know what to talk about, because I can ask her about running, I can ask about book, about hiking, and so on and so forth. It's almost like that we go with these in our minds, with these performance things, like, okay,
Yeah.
what can I say? Okay, if I say this and then she says that, but how can I continue the conversation? And we can get so much in our head that then we think that there's something wrong with us, because clearly, in fact, we don't even consider how nervous or anxious the other person might be. We think, I don't know, they're fine, I'm the one freaking out.
Hmm.
And it's having that understanding and having that awareness.
Hmm.
And it's almost like, okay, let me just relax, let me just think about, let me try to be myself. And
Hmm.
that connects to a point that you said at the beginning of your answer, when it comes to the emotional intelligence and becoming aware of the parts of us,
Hmm.
that we have different parts, and we tend to, it's funny, I've talked to people, both guys and girls, and a lot of them say, oh, I'm very self-aware. And when you ask them, okay, tell me how you are self-aware, because I want to understand people better, they go ahead and describe all the bad things, all the negative things, all their flaws that they have. Like,
Hmm.
okay, that's fair. How about the positive ones? What do you like about yourself? Well, there are three or four things, but they're not a big thing. It's like, wait, hold on a minute. You are a self-hater masked as self-aware. Yeah, you're not, you're doing, if you go and watch and observe and study every hater in the world, they're just going to point out all the negative things, and when you bring out some of the positive, they diminish them. That's what you're doing with yourself. We all do it to some extent. And it's having the enough compassion and awareness and understanding that, hey, if I can see the flaws, I can always see the positive things as well.
Yeah.
Now, are those flaws really flaws? That's a conversation for another day. That is
Right.
something that I've discovered lately, how some of the parts of that we think that are flaws are either gifts that we bury as under shame because
Yeah.
somebody couldn't receive them very well, and the other parts are the survival strategies we build to survive. Like, okay, if I'm going to be a people pleaser just because I felt growing up that getting love from people was conditional. And in order for me to survive, I need to people please, or I need to overachieve, or I need to be a perfectionist, because
Yeah.
it's all about survival. But that doesn't mean that that was you. That's something that you created to survive, but it doesn't serve you anymore. So again, one thing is just a lot of different things which I love. But going back to men, and this is tricky because, as you said, men, the way that we are raised, the way that we grow up is, well, you cannot show emotions, just suck it up, or walk it out, whatever.
Yeah.
Do those things because you cannot show the other person,
Yeah.
whether it's a man or a woman, that you are sort of weak. How do you
Hmm.
break those patterns in your clients, that because it's, when they're being when they have attached their identity to something for so long, decades even, when you bring a paradigm shift, like that's not how you should see yourself, that's not how you should see life or relationships, it creates that the resistance. Is almost like a cognitive dissonance, that in my body I feel like, okay, no, what Chris is saying is wrong, but
Hmm.
rationally I understand what Chris is saying is right.
Hmm.
So how
Hmm.
you help them break free from that
Hmm.
story?
Yeah, and you bring up a lot of great points, and some of the things you said is what I use. I love that you pointed out how our flaws, these things that we have. And by the way, also fantastic. Self-hating is not self-awareness, is not emotional intelligence. And I'm really glad you pointed out. Hey, I just get so much. I'm self-aware, and I think most of the time we associate that, and I used to as well in the past because I've had exes screaming at me that I'm not vulnerable, or I'm not yeah my low emotional intelligence or whatever. They were yelling at me, so I'm like, okay, okay. And what they were pissed off because I wasn't noticing things that pissed them off. But yes, being self-aware doesn't include only beating yourself up and self-flagellating over the flaws and the things that are currently flaws. And then on that topic of flaws, or or negative patterns or whatever that we currently do, I love that you pointed out the truth that we develop these habits and these patterns, and these what may in present day be flaws, because they were absolutely necessary, extremely useful survival skills for us, in our youth, when we were subconsciously figuring out, well, how do we need to show up, and how do we need to behave, how do we need to think in order to get to see tomorrow, just have another chance. And reminds me a little bit of like maybe if my whole life I was on a baseball diamond and I just need to be good at baseball, baseball, baseball. And then life evolves, and now I'm playing basketball. And if I'm still wearing my cleats, absolutely, I needed the cleats. Maybe I fashioned my own cleats and I built my own cleats, took a pair of shoes and pounded studs in there so I could not slip around. And then life changes, so dramatically from from childhood to adulthood. I mean, think about the metrics that we had for success, are so K through 12 are all about just graduating these very structured systems. And now we're in this thing called life, and we can go now we're playing 4D chess on there. But yeah, and that is what I do, is to help men, first of all, kind of unpack. So the guys I coach, they're very logical men like me. I'm a little OCD even. I love logic. I can't move until I believe something makes sense. So call it fearful, call it whatever you want, but things need to make sense first. If I'm going to, you said, make this huge paradigm shift and take action, I'm going to let go of this parachute, is crappy and faulty as it may be. I need to know why I'm doing it, and why and what I'm attaching instead. If I feel like I'm jumping and putting myself in vulnerability and potentially in harm's way, and that is what I help men figure out, is to realize their flaws are not flaws; they're just it's outdated software. It's time to update it, and then to help kind of take some of the heat away, the fire away of so the self judgment of like, oh, why do I keep doing this, or why am I, most of my clients are, guys who overthink, just thinking, 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 and absolutely they're PhDs, or they, almost all graduated college, and they're making a lot of money because of their overthinking. Overthinking skills at the time was just very powerful thinking skills at the time, and they didn't exercise and put in the reps at the gym for other parts of their brain, and that's where they are. So it's first getting them to understand. Um, take away the hate of it, understand the logic of why they had those skills and develop those current day flaws, and then to get them to understand. And then what I do, Daniel, is just start just micro pipetting tiny little bits of experimental the new habit, the new thing we're trying to create. Just have them start doing these little micro experiments on their own with their own willingness. I'm not asking them to climb, up to the 1,000-foot high dive and jump off. I say, hey, let's just stare at the water for a second. Let's dip a toe in there and then pull it back out. How'd that feel? How'd that feel? So that goes back to the emotional intelligence part about relationships with ourselves. As I start getting men, first of all, yes, to start. Okay, now you're going to be sensing, your toes. So how does it feel when you dip it in? A lot of these guys are like, well, I don't know, I haven't felt in so long. But to get them to start realizing it and then acknowledging in their own words if they like something, and then they go, okay, yeah, let's try a little bit more, and let them kind of turn the dial versus dunking their head underwater and throwing them in the pool, making them swim, but letting them go on their own cognizance of at their own pace as well, to take those calculated risks so that they're not, yeah, they are still calculated, but in a way that they see the actual fruits of, and they go, wow, this is feeling good. Yeah, I think I want a little bit more of that. So it's those baby steps that we do it, and helping them logically understand why they're letting go something they've been holding so tightly and opening up their hand, and so we can place something very small, very new, and letting them experience it and say, please, sir, kind of, may I have another? Start dropping more in.
Yeah. So basically, what you're doing is having little of exposure therapy
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
they can understand what you're saying. Okay, what Chris is saying, it makes sense, but my body doesn't know it yet. So I have to sort of teach my body that it's safe to have these small, low risk, low stakes experiences
yeah,
because maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, I had one experience that defined my entire nervous system
yes,
and it was scary.
yes,
And since we know that nervous system doesn't know any time,
yes.
basically what you experienced 30 years ago for your nervous system happened yesterday. So I need to reteach my body that what I'm trying to accomplish, what I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
do, it
Mm-hmm.
is safe. And you having those micro steps, micro
Mm-hmm.
movements that, okay, you know what? I put a toe. That is not too bad. Okay, now I'll
Yeah,
put a whole foot, then half of my leg, and so on and so forth. So
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and that
Go.
that
Mhm.
plasticity for them to realize the same way that where they were able to, they were dropped into this world, more or less completely unpatterned, and they pick these things up and help them kind of do the math and connect the dots. They go, oh yeah, I picked that up for dad. Dad taught me that. He didn't, and he probably learned it from his grandpa or whatnot, and it formed a function. You know what? And yeah, it felt really really bad at the time, but dad was probably, or mom, thought they were loving me the best way that they could by passing down what worked for them. And maybe they weren't as, as maybe they were biologically a different person, so maybe they weren't as sensitive, and the dislikes and the pains weren't as strong with them as they are for me. But to understand, yeah, that kind of takes away some of the heat and the blame, and that. And again, I always do, I really do. Brain is wild. I do think a lot of things are just so incredibly, when it makes sense. It's almost like math to me. I'm like, that's why it is. And as soon as things make math sense to me, that's when I'm able to let go and try something new, and it just makes sense to try something new, and to start, yeah, and to literally leaning in to those, yeah, to those new new habits, and to continue on with them.
One of the big, probably biggest paradigm shifts and open eyes moments that I got
Hmm.
was to realize, and this is through, I don't know, content I saw on Instagram, podcasts, books I've read. It's like I think everything came together in one piece of insight, I guess,
Yeah,
is that all of us are sort of like spellbound based on what we believe. So when you were talking about just earlier, a guy who might say he's OCD, that
yeah,
he needs to analyze and he's too logical. I don't know who said it, but somebody gave an example. Say, okay, imagine that you're the person who tells me that you have OCD. And I said, well, Chris, if I cut you open, is there anywhere, your bones, your organs, your muscles, anywhere that says that Chris is OCD? or Chris
Mm,
love logic? Is there
mm,
anywhere that says that? And the person will say, no. Okay, so where does that live?
mhm,
In our head. Okay, what
mhm.
is it made of? Of words. Okay, is that an absolute truth? I mean, if it's made out of words, then we can change the words and change and do something else. So we are spellbound by our own limitations, and we think, well, that girls like that are not into me, or maybe I'm not the guy who's charming. I'm not the kind of guy who
Mhm,
who gets his way. Well,
mhm,
that is once again your own words saying that, but
mhm,
that's not
mhm,
necessarily true, and you can change that. Which to me is like, ah,
mhm.
now I see it. Now every limiting belief or limiting story or limiting thought I have, I can challenge it and realize,
Yeah,
well, if this true or not. So I
yeah.
I really thought about that when you were mentioning some of your clients, because I'm always trying to find ways to things make just to make things click in a
Yeah,
way that, okay, once I see that, whoa, okay, cool, that
yeah.
works. But even pivoting a bit with, because it's so highly related to what you do when it comes to emotional intelligence and dating as well, is I feel, I guess it is my perception, and we have talked off cameras and I've shared on the podcast. I was in a relationship for almost 10 years. I haven't gotten back to dating again, but I've seen a lot of people, just a lot of things that are happening out there doesn't make sense to me. But what I've seen, I realized that dating has become such an emotionally triggering experience for so many people.
Mm,
What
mm,
what do you think that that is, and what would be the first step in making it less about performance, which I think that everyone is, or almost everyone is doing that, and more so about authentic connection?
I love it. Great questions. And I love, yeah, you mentioned that word earlier, performative, and I do think, and that's why I like to distance myself from the generic dating coach umbrella because, um, and yeah, I definitely, I followed, I studied, I did all those things. I know I can tell by some of your vernacular that you picked up a few dating books as well, and a lot of those are very much performative and setting up, and they're all about controlling uh, the situation, the environment, the frame, the context, right? And that is almost, and you mentioned that just because a great actor is on stage, well, and he's performing, they're putting on a show, and but what they don't know, uh, what they end up disconnecting from, if they're so focused on their own performances, is they're blinded by the lights. They have no idea what the other person's feeling. And in this case, a relationship is, it's not a one person show, but being too many dating coaches and date people who do dating programs, they learn and they, okay, be performative. And what that is that means, well, now you're representing an avatar, whoever character you're embodying and creating. And, people say, just be charismatic, just be confident or whatever. And that happens to be, well, okay, so pretend to be somebody else. Because if you're not truly there, so then you're bullshitting the audience, and this audience in this case, who are female, are extremely, very, very, very receptive, and they're genetically around because they can smell through that BS, and they know their instincts on knowing the truth and trusting are very, very well attuned. I mean, look at the way women speak; they like four different layers of subtext. So they are wired in to sniff things out on very higher emotional intelligence style levels. But yeah, so the performed. I'm really glad you pointed that out because after a while you run out of lines and you run out of things to say. But most importantly, even if you execute it perfectly, whatever your goal is, you get her home, you guys hook up. Um, well, then at some point, if you want to do it again, and why wouldn't you want to do it again? It felt good the worst time. Well, then you're gonna run out of material, and your monologues is going to expire, and she's going to have to see you, and you're going to have to see her at some point to really start the relationship. And the relationship is, there's you, there's her, and then there's that whole third entity on there, and that's impossible to see that other person, that audience member, if we're so focused on our next line, our delivery, in control. And remember, we talked about having emotional intelligence is about feeling, and feeling that gives us the ability to respond instead of react. When we just react, that's subconscious. Boom, different parts of our reptilian brain. We're getting scared, we're freaking out, we're yelling, we're angry. versus responding. That's, more prefrontal cortex, things like that. So now I'm choosing, and I have a very high awareness of who I am, and I may be somatically feeling, oh my gosh, I'm feeling flushed, or I'm feeling nervous, or I'm feeling shaky, or whatever, and then to make sense of it, and then actively choose. For example, maybe you're going on a date with a gal, and you walk up there, and you're holding your drink, and your drink shaking. It would be dishonest, even on a performative stage, to not acknowledge the drink that you're spilling as you're walking over to talk to her, because if you were so incredibly nervous and shy. What's so much more powerful and authentic and endearing to a person is to say, "Holy moly, I am so nervous. You are whatever, gorgeous. Like, I'm what that's authentic." And now that lets us get past all this BS, because at the end of the day, a person, if you're wants to be in a meaningful relationship, they're going to have to see you, and you're going to have to see them, and you're not going to be able to see them if you're too busy reciting the lines in your head, and they're not going to get to see you as well if you're too busy, presenting this avatar on there as well. So thank you, yeah, for pointing out the importance of not just trying to be somebody, but to, for the sake of somebody else, and mold yourself, and do that. But instead, this is what I teach my guys, is to really get to know yourself, and then learn to showcase yourself. Showcase, the because they're dating. It is a dance, and this doesn't sound like double talk, but there is a little bit of the courting. It's inherent. We need it. We can't immediately start off, trauma dumping, and sharing whatever, all the insecurities, or that can't be the whole foundation of the relationship. So there does need to be some clever showcasing, the same way that Coca-Cola or a food company, makes their Big Mac look really, really, really tasty. And then you order, you're like, okay, that's what it is. But by that time, hopefully you don't feel there's been you're not setting a relationship up with just pure smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, one thing that not many people realize, and that's going back to your example of the shaking drink, right?
Yeah.
Is that vulnerability disarms.
Mm,
Because
he does.
when you pretend that you know it all, when you
Mm,
pretend that nothing affects you, when you pretend that you are extremely comfortable, people cannot relate to you at
yeah.
all. And that sense of, hey, I'm flow as well, I'm nervous as well, I'm tend to be scared every now and then as well. It gives people permission to breathe and to be okay. I don't have to be on my A game because this person also is human, also is flawed. So that is, even though our nervous system is saying, no, don't showcase this
Yeah.
because this is dangerous,
Yeah.
it actually disarms. One thing that when it comes to performance and all of that,
And it's so sexy
that
too,
I really,
Daniel, because
yeah, yeah,
Daniel, because now, by you being authentic, and this is so wild, and this is what guys don't understand, is the bar is getting so low. Oh, and then one thing I mentioned, the reason we're in this whole mess, I think, is because of the the social media evolution plus COVID, and that's why I believe that's why our emotional intelligence level, while not great, it was so much better and higher before, and now we are just living lives, talking with you instead of, we're doing this over computer instead of hanging out at and doing it in my place or your place, and that we are working from home, and our lives we're more physically disconnected, and we have more relationships, superficial type of relationships online, and that's but on the on the contrary, but on the other side of that, the benefit is that guys, you can just do the bare minimum. It feels like maximum nowadays. These gals are just like, oh, I can't believe he said that. Whereas before, 20, 15 years ago, every house as well, a lot of much of higher percentage men, but people are starved for authenticity, and you will. This is what I coach my guys, and I again, I just have them just micro test, being a little vulnerable, being a little bit authentic, and noticing how people react and respond to their ability to see and acknowledge, and maybe even share something about themselves, instead of trying to be this Instagram ready, performative, filtered, version of themselves. Sorry for interrupting. I just had to say that, as how sexy it
no,
is.
no,
It's just so attractive. It's received in like 10x the level, the reward you get is like 10x the risk involved in it. So it just always makes sense to go for it, to go for the authentic moment versus, if you stumble, don't play it off. You like laugh at yourself, man. It's so endearing and so sick. Especially, I'm coaching a couple of guys right now, and they're like big looking, intimidating guys, and they'll do this tiniest little thing. I'm like, man, I gotta admit, if I was a girl, whew, you just would have got me right there. You need to do that more. And I know you're only doing it because you're with me and because and you're not nervous about me rejecting you. But I'm telling you, that's gold. That is gold. So anybody listening out there, hopefully that lands with some of you.
Yeah, I love that because I've heard that a lot, that the bar has have never been so low, and yet it's okay. If that's the case, why the heck people are having so much trouble connecting, so much trouble getting to relationships or finding love? One
Yeah.
thing that I realized about myself, and this is probably a part of a personal story and experience, is growing up. I and even until I've been accept I've accepted that part of me in the last 2 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up, I perceived that for the world I was too much, like too deep, too curious. Right? I'm somebody who many people don't know how to respond to my conversations, to my insights,
Mm-hmm.
and this is just comes natural. I don't try
Yeah.
to blow your mind. To me, it's like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm all any. I mean, I'm so curious that any topic that we're talking about, I might just throw a super deep question because I just want to understand better.
Love it.
Anyhow, so for many years, outside a handful of good relationships I had, I used to deem myself. I would try to, okay, I don't want to be too much. I don't want to come across as too much. Now, I
Mm,
wouldn't pretend to be someone else, but in terms of what Daniel is, instead of being close to 90 to 100, I would be close to 40 and 50 because I was too afraid
mm,
of being rejected for who I was. Now, here's the thing. If you either when you do that, you're abandoning yourself because you are afraid or you're scared of not being chosen, because being chosen feels like almost like being validated, like somebody finally saw you and said, you know what, you are enough.
mm.
And when
That's
we're not chosen by some people, we feel there's something wrong with us, instead of understanding maybe that person couldn't receive what you had. And the fact that they couldn't carry or they couldn't see it, that doesn't mean that it has to be your burden. That means that that person just wasn't meant for you, even from a friendship point of view.
yeah.
and and it's almost like when I start realizing that and leaning more into who I am, and it's like, you know what, yes, every now and then I'll chat with someone, and we were chatting, and then I throw like a deep thought, a deep thing, just comes natural to me of being authentic, and
Yeah.
then the person doesn't know how to respond and they ghost, or they takes 2 days to respond. It's like, okay, when in the past I used to get hurt by it or just
Yeah.
affected, because okay, maybe that means that if I had done things differently, if I had been more like lighthearted, if I haven't been quote unquote too much, things would have been different. But would I want to be less than with someone by just accepting them and abandoning myself?
Yeah.
So that is something that probably a lot of people, maybe both guys and girls, feel in a sense that when they are into someone and they feel, well, I've been told I've been too much in the past, so let me just play with my DJ board and lower some levers and make it more
Mm,
normal. But then what makes you unique is what makes you attractive,
mhm.
that authenticity. And with the performance point that you said just now, one thing that stuck in my mind is like, if you're not being yourself, the world that you have created is not for you,
Mhm.
because it reinforces the idea that, imagine that I'm attracted to you, right? And then I'm
Mhm.
trying to be this other person, and then you like me, and then I say, okay, Chris only likes me because I'm this other person. But if he
Mhm.
knew but the real me, there's no chance that he would like me, which reinforces the idea that I should hate myself,
Mm.
because clearly that person wouldn't like that version of me. So I like how you help people just to be more authentic and embrace that. I know it's hard because it took me a while to just accept who I was. Hey, this is just me. And I have a good friend of mine, and she said, hey, just shit test her. Just be as fucking this deep as you can. I
Yeah.
mean, and if if she keeps up with you and she
Uh-huh.
can hold the depth and the conversations and all of that, then of course you don't want to be someone who doesn't have that. I don't understand
Yeah.
because my previous relationship were the same way. People could hold the same level of curiosity, the same level of depth, and all of that. But and I know I said a lot, but I had a
Good.
question because it seems to me that there's this narrative of what it's like to be a man. What is a man? What's the masculinity? What's the gender role of a man nowadays? What is a high value man or high value woman?
Mm-hmm.
All these things, and I wonder, based on your own experience, based on the people that you have coached, based
Mm-hmm.
on your own interaction, what does healthy masculinity or healthy masculine leadership in dating actually look like
Mm-hmm.
in today's modern world or even dating world?
Great question. I also I'll answer that. I want to point out what you were mentioning about how, and all of us, we're all a little too much at something. Everybody listening, you think about it. You give you a second. Probably don't even need a second. You know what makes you a little bit extra. Um, and I love that your friend asked you to shit test. I would say it doesn't even have to be a shit test, but this is where emotional intelligence comes in. What is scary about being around somebody who is too much? It isn't that they're too much, it's when we perceive them is, uh-oh, I don't think they have much self-awareness. I don't think they realize that maybe, maybe they're on the spectrum or something, and maybe they're really loud talker in public, and it's like, blowing out the front window. You're like, I don't, and they're that would be that is if you didn't know, you're like, oh shoot, what other surprises are in store? And it's scary to be around and to get too close to somebody, because then you're going to have to be the one breaking the news. However, if maybe you are, I'll just stick with that same example. Maybe you are a person that is it has challenges reading social cues and adjusting your volume or your temperament or excitement levels to something. It's extremely disarming and endearing, um, to let somebody know, in a playful way, say, "Hey, just so you know, yeah, I'm a little nutty, and I sometimes and I get when I get excited, I talk really loud. I'm aware of that." And just when you hear that from somebody, you're like, "Oh, okay." And now it can become a cute quirk versus, a potential like, "Uh-oh, red flag," and what kind of drama or what our brains, when we don't know the answers to things or we get fearful, our brains go crazy places and we imagine, this person's going to put us in some, dangerous situation or whatever. But like, for example, like, and I'm the same as you, by the way. And my friends, they love me. They all, joke, and I drive them nuts. Some of them, with how deep I want to go on things and how, serious. And I'm definitely a fun guy, but I just don't have fun hanging out on the surface. I love to hold my breath and go really, really deep, and get real vulnerable, for good or for bad. Sometimes people don't want to go there, but yeah, you might experiment when you're on your, a next date and you're about somebody. Hey, just so you know, I love to go deep. Are you like snorkel, hold your breath, or like scuba? Are we talking, like crazy, to the depths? And you're like, I
Titanic
promise we're
shit.
not gonna, yeah, we're not gonna implode. We won't go that deep. If I do, let me know, and we'll come back up. And just to give somebody permission to see you and control the situation like that, I have a feeling they're going to willingly go, a lot deeper, and or tolerate whatever your picadillo happens to be. They're going to give us more grace because they're going to know, oh, it's safe. He's done this right before. We know where we're going, and just sharing that level of emotional intelligence. Um, it's calming. It's reassuring. It builds security, and that's what we want to know. And it's going to give them permission, like, oh, cool. Daniel's not being weird. He's sharing a vulnerability with me now. And now, because he's voicing it and sharing, now I can share something about me that I don't share with everybody. Well, now you and this person, now you're starting to have a special relationship. Now this isn't, Instagram bullshit. This is like a real, this isn't hey, how you doing? This is like, oh, shoot. And this is when you get to start sharing and offloading connections and burdens and stresses, and crowdsourcing it to them and getting more help. And getting the giver's gain of helping them out as well. And that's when I think a truly, for me, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the type. The reason I like having these deep conversations because I like having deep relationships. I just love connection, and that's why I think it's impossible to get there to have these meaningful relationships without having meaningful conversations. So just wanted to point that out there. Um, what does healthy masculinity look like? Yeah, I think it looks like doing. I think it looks like being able to express when we're scared, and then or we're worried or whatever, and then having the internal courage that in spite of that fear to be able to trust ourselves and to be able to take that action. So like with vulnerability, for example, it means taking a risk where there is a potential that you won't get what you want and you could be hurt. The reason it's so sexy when a person is, and it's so attractive, both guys and girls, by the way, is because they have a self, they have a trust and a self acceptance with themselves and a deep understanding and a security with themselves. And we're all seeking security. We're all seeking security within ourselves, and we want to be around other people who also feel secure, who like themselves. You've probably been around people who are, maybe physically and blessed with gorgeous, expensive things or whatnot, but they're just miserable people. And you're like, wow, get me away from that person. You couldn't pay me enough. Maybe they offered you to go hang out and vacation with them, whatever it is. Like, no, ick, gross. And then there's people who, don't have a pot to piss in, as my grandma would say, but yeah, they're just okay. And they're like, man, that okayness, I think that is where that, a healthy masculinity lies. The okayness you mentioned of self-acceptance, of not having constantly comparing and judging ourselves to every single person, and puffing our chest out and posturing for the sake of posturing because we're trying to be good enough by building it up from outside, outside influence, outside affirmation. But I think healthy masculinity is a person who's able to affirm who they are, acknowledge who they are, the good, the bad, the ugly inside themselves, and still like themselves enough so that they're able to be outwardly focused and engage with other people and find things about other people that they truly like and enjoy, and see the light in others. And that's just it's attractive to be around those people. you know, just it is universal, and I think that's what women are missing. I believe that especially with the Me Too movement, they oversteered and went way too hard, and attempted to erase masculinity, and then threw in toxic masculinity, and just took a bulldozer and just annihilated the whole building, and said basically made men feel like it's everything we do about us is toxic, and that's very very far from the truth. So I think they threw the baby out with the bathwater in a lot of senses, and now men, we are struggling to try to figure out, well, so what are we allowed? What is healthy masculinity then? Because maybe we attached it and thought they were all, like being competitive. Well, it can be healthy. It can also be unhealthy. But so there's just a lot of nuances in there, and so I'm glad we're having these deeper conversations.
No, absolutely. And yes, when it comes to with these things about being healthy masculinity, I see why it's hard because you have so many contradicting voices on social media. Everyone is saying something different, and I believe all of them are both right and wrong. There are some things that are right about them. Even people like Andrew Tate have a couple of things that say, okay, like in his case, call it misogynist, call it however you want to call him. I don't care. But to me, it's like, okay, one of his messages is up to you. You have to. I mean, you're not a victim. You're responsible for the life you have.
Yeah.
So it gives you the power back to you, even though maybe 5% of the shit he says, so 10% of the shit is actually okay. That's actually good and accurate. I can see that. But if you only consume one
Yeah.
content or two, but then it's like, okay, this guy is saying this guy is saying that, okay, holy shit, I don't even know what to do. So we get overwhelmed by all these other things that we need to do. And it seems like for you, it comes back to just one thing, just be authentic.
Hmm.
Easier said than done, by the way. easier said
Mhm.
than done, because
Mhm.
as I said, we are going to be rejected a lot because we are not going to match with a lot of people. And I've lived that experience. I'm just like you. I have a small group of friends, but there are deep friendships when we have deep conversations. And not only it's not deep conversations only about emotions and struggles in life, but even topics like this one, right? That we are talking about what makes what is emotional intelligence, or what makes relationship last, and things going at a deeper level that doesn't have to involve personal traumas or
Mm.
vulnerability or personal stories, but understanding things at a deeper level, being more, I guess, intellectual about it to some extent.
Mhm.
And going back to the Me Too movement, yes, I do agree a lot with that. And I think I mentioned to you, last conversation I've mentioned in the on the podcast in the past, is that that was, for better or for worse, it created that perfect light for men to tell themselves that I'm not approaching because women are going to perceive me as a creeper or somebody who's going to sexually harass her. And some women, man, I wish I could understand the female brain more. But I've seen sort of tweets, people that are great at searching stuff and putting things together. There was this example of this girl who tweeted maybe a year or two ago, say, hey, if I'm walking on the street, or if I'm doing this and I'm carrying this, I don't want to be approached. I just want to be left alone, right? 2 years later, or a year and a half later, just like 2 days ago, she tweeted, what happened? Why am I not even, approaching anymore? It's like, bro, do you see what you said a year and a half ago? So
Yeah.
yes, I think a lot of people are just scared, both men and women, not as scared of, it's just of being seen,
Yeah.
of truly being seen. Because if you're truly being seen and then you get rejected, then it's attached to your self-worth, even though it shouldn't. Because somebody rejecting you shouldn't affect your worth and your value. Somebody accepting you shouldn't affect your worth and your value. Your value only increases when you
Mhm.
accept yourself and honor
Mhm.
yourself, rather
Mhm.
than
Mhm.
putting that onto someone else. But
Yeah. Yeah, and we
I
can't
will,
reject
yeah,
we
yeah.
can't
Mhm.
risk getting rejected and crossing the street and talking to that gal if we don't have enough self-respect, self-love in our deposited in ourselves. It's just too risky. If you're like on your last thread and I happen to walk across that girl, the year ago version of that girl, and she calls me a creep, which by the way, oh my God, it hurt so bad. I don't it's the worst thing ever. I've been called up. I'm like, it still bothers me. Like 10 years later, I'm like, I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Dang it. To get that scarlet letter, like the big C. Ugh, it just hurts. And yeah, and to do that, it takes risk. So, and I think that with the Me Too movement and social media and COVID, it's rejection's always been hard, and approaching and courting, it's always been risky. That's why I feel so good, because it's hard, right? If it was easy, it would just feel great and it wouldn't be a big deal to fall in love. But because there's so much falling and falling and falling, and tripping and getting hurt on there, and I think that people use that Me Too movement, they're used it as excuses to check out, as validation to check out, and too long. And that's my problem with social media, is you can go on any internet thread and go in, and there's hundreds of subreddits of people there, as you mentioned, the Andrew Dates, and there's all these, men going their own way movements that are just, with a Patreon account, they will give you permission for $9.95 every month to check out and give you all the validation. They will show you those two videos of that same gal, and you're like, yep, this is bullshit. This is why I'm just focusing on me, man. I'm just working on my own self, and I'm going to build myself up then. And then at some point, I'm going to pop up when I'm ready, and I've got, my Scrooge McDuck Goldfield pool in the background with my gold coins, and I can spit out gold coins. Then and only then I'll invite. Is it Daisy Duck? I don't know. I'll invite her over to the thing, and I'll have Riz and Game, and she's gonna get in her two piece, and we're gonna live happily ever after. Unfortunately, guys, if anybody who's ever wanted to be good at anything, and we just said getting understanding a women is constantly changing. It's harder than golf. Same way that just way you wouldn't say I'm going to work my ass off and then pop my head up at however years old with all this money and just be good at golf because I'm just going to be good at. No, that's not how it works. Same thing with relationships. You need to constantly having a life. I believe that has some to create that harmony, we have to be etching out times and commitments and working on those things. And if you're not working on your on actively working on talking to other gals, then be honest with yourself. And if say, am I really doing self work by having huge muscles and by working, a ton of hours and making a lot of money, or am I using that as a socially acceptable way to numb out? And I hand up, I used to be that guy. Would numb out. I would focus, on nonstop on anything other than, and probably why so many women would scream at me to actually work on myself. I would do anything else that would get me high fives and was deemed socially acceptable. It's cool to have, the cool car. You'll get high fives. The watch, the money, muscles, clothes. What are those things? But is that truly making is that truly helping your end game of being in a relationship? I would say not.
Yeah, and I believe that, at least to me, that's a complete illusion. Because
Yeah.
if you think, oh, once I'm ready, I'll go out, either one, you're never gonna feel ready, or two, if, as you said, you get the car, the watch, the house, the
Yeah.
money, the status, and you go out, and then you're able to take women home, or
Uh-huh.
you're able to start a relationship, you're going to either consciously or subconsciously start resenting that person, because that person likes you for what you have, not for who you are.
Hmm.
And some people might be okay with that, but it's a miserable way of living life.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, see, I knew the world's full of gold diggers. Well, if you go and show the world that that's your value, that's your worth, that's what makes you you, clearly that's what you're going to attract. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when you were in the
Right.
manosphere saying, okay, I need to make all this money because girls only care about money and looks, and I'm going to get jacked, I'm going to get money, okay, and then you go out there and you only pay attention to those who are looking for that, because that's
Yeah.
where your skills, quote unquote
Yeah.
skills,
Yeah.
are good, because you haven't developed all the skills just to be more, as you said, more vulnerable or more authentic. Then
Yeah.
clearly, once you get that, you're going to hate society, you're going to hate women, you're going to hate yourself even more so, because it's almost like, okay, that means that nobody likes me for who I am. I wish I always knew it, and I always had to have all these things in order for me to succeed. So to me, yes, it's definitely something that people have to become aware and realize it's all an illusion. That
I
all the things when you think, it's not real.
I love that you point out the it's not even bitter irony. It's hilarious. It's frustrating. Like that the men end up feeling, and they see it all the time. They end up feeling resentful for liking the things that you only know. You're dressing up in chainmail and presenting yourself as a whatever, as a knight, and they like you because you're a knight, and you're like, you didn't see my heart. She's liking me for the things that I do. Like, bro, that's all that you have invested the last whatever 15, 20 years of your life showcasing that and only showcasing that. And then what a victim way to set yourself up. What a self-fulfilling prophecy, like you said, that we end up creating ourselves and end up chasing and biting our own tails. And then we have the audacity. This goes for women as well, especially also women as well. And then the finger point and say, how I can't believe them. How dare they only like me for being whatever, a piece of meat, or or more for my money, like you pointed out, and they don't really know me. And the truth is man, yeah, people can only respect, and I think also it only love you to the point that you can respect and love yourself. And if you're not uh, really loving, like truly knowing who you are, and I don't mean just the aspects of yourself. Oh, I like, my muscles or my car, but actually, that's not you. Those are all those things. Look what happens. They can get repoed and they can get atrophied very quickly. But who are really you at your core? And until we really get clear on that, and that's emotional intelligence, I believe, is of who we are, and really fall in love and learn to really like that person. I think then and only then can another person like and fall in love back with us.
Yeah, 100%. And yes, women are the same way, that they go on thinking, Men get women through resources. That's from an evolutionary standpoint. Women get through sex because that's how they can birth children, all of that. But then if that's the first thing that you offer, and then you say, well, that's what they want me for, well, that's the first thing that
Mm-hmm.
you offer. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of on you, but that's a
Or that's
different
all
story.
that you offer. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all you keep showing up and you keep doing. And you're not having these deep Daniel Chris conversations with the person. You're immediately unrobing, and then how can we blame other people for? No one's going to kick our front door down and pull us off the couch and dust the Cheetos off our chest and throw the Xbox controller over and then say okay, you know, tell me all about it. No, that's not going to happen. And we, even if they did, we still wouldn't feel comfortable if we haven't really considered it and thought about it. And that doesn't mean, perseverating and just sitting there, zoning out, meditating out, and just being alone and considering, contemplating our navel, as my grandpa used to say, and without actually doing anything. It means, um, you know, having a balanced life that involves taking risks and having vulnerability, and getting rejected and having the sunny days and the cloudy days all together so that we can feel it versus living this very low risk, swiping life that's just a little like a dopamine drip, just enough to make you feel a little semblance of what connection actually feels like. um, and calling that a life, and low risk is low reward.
100%. And the way that you treat yourself is the way that other people are going to treat you. So if you have a high level of, say, self hatred, that you don't like
Yeah.
yourself, then your baseline to tolerate what other people give you is so much higher
Yeah.
because you're already doing that to yourself. So if somebody
Yes.
treats you poorly, you're going to probably accept it because it reinforces the idea. Of course, I mean, I treat myself even worse. So this just mean there's they know who I am, and
Yeah.
that's something that it goes back to the emotional intelligence of understanding who we truly are, and we don't have to hate ourselves, but that requires a much deeper inner work. Chris, we
Mm,
talked about a lot of different things, but there's one question I have in my mind that has been there for a while. Because you've been in this world for a while, in when it comes to the dating world, helping men, talking to women as friends, and even probably dating in the past, what would you say is one modern myth about dating that you think is holding people back the most right now?
mm. What is one modern myth about dating that I think is holding people back the most right now? Ooh, uh, I think that, man, I think that because I think we think our farts smell better than they do. And what I mean by that is, I think I mentioned how we have these superficial, it's either a like or a not, kind of environment. And I think because we are like hummingbirds, we're tapping in and we're tapping out, moving around and fluttering around, and we have hundreds of more relationships, than we used to have in the past. Especially, I know you like, anthropology and evolution and biology, and we used to have much smaller tribes where if you and I existed, and if we were in the same tribe, about 150, 300 people, absolutely max. And then at some point, that's too many people for our brains to wrap around, and we would have to split off and form other tribes because too many people to manage. And the beauty about having when we had those, think back for all the listeners about when you had the smaller tribe when you were in, middle school or grade school, especially when it's nice and small. You couldn't get away with a lot of shit because your friends would call you out on it. The people would call, not even friends, people you didn't even like would call you on it. But you guys lived together, and someone farted, you smelled their fart. You couldn't get it away with it, and somebody would let you know. They literally, were there to physically grab you. And I think, we have too much lack of, and again, it goes both ways. I think now when we're interacting with people, both when we praise them and when we attempt to offer feedback, constructive feedback, constructive criticism, that we don't touch people as impact them, and we're not as truthful and as honest as we used to be. And so I think because of that, with our friends, with our whatever, like, dude, if I barely knew you and I saw you being an asshole, I would only I and I did, but if I saw you just very frequently, I couldn't go very deep. Or if I really, really knew you and I've seen you doing this and I've seen your family and I've seen the upbringing and it's I'm like this now we're drilling and you're gonna have because I've gone that hole before and I go deeper and deeper and deeper. Now I'm able to drop in and go even deeper. And I think that we don't spend enough time with one another. So I think my to sum it up, I think the biggest misconception that we have in modern dating right now is that we live in a society where we are too busy celebrating and we just don't have the type of friends and connections to really shoot us straight. And because of that, I think a lot of us have our egos and our expectations way overblown. And we have too many friends telling us we're perfect, beautiful, sexy, all these amazing things. And we're all out there looking for perfect because that's what we see on social media. Everyone looks perfect. Well, it's not really them though, because it's an avatar. It's smoke and mirrors. It's filters. It's whatever. And we're putting ourselves out there as a more perfect version of ourselves as well. So I think that we've lost fact that we're just so sensitive. It just hurts us. Now, if we're that's the difference between emotional intelligence and being offended really easy is that we take everything so personal because we get so little honest feedback. And I think that's absolutely hurting us. We don't have the friends to slap us upside the head and say, "What the hell are you doing? That girl was great." No, dude, you're not out of her league, bro. She's fantastic. You're missing this. Open your eyes. What bullshit are you seeing? Are you believing? You're getting lost in the sauce, man. And we are way too many. So I think we're lost in the social media sauce.
I love that, and I think it goes back to authenticity. And I do believe, and people might kill me, who knows? But I don't, I don't
Love
care.
it.
I
Do it.
think women have more problems with that than men. Women are more fake in terms of giving each other compliments or not being truthful to one another because they feel that, well, I don't know what is it in the like a female logic that happens a lot. Guys
Yeah.
can be more honest and more brutal to one another, and we understand it comes from a place of love. Hey,
Yeah.
if I'm telling you something harsh, it's because I love you, bro, and I
Yeah.
want you to be better at something. But also, I'm going to lift you up when I see that something that you're not seeing in yourself. So
That's it.
there's a level of honesty between men that, but women on the flip side have the ability to go deeper and more intimate and more vulnerable with each other that men don't have. So if women could be more honest with themselves or with each other about what the flaws are, or things that other women should improve, and if men could be more intimate, more vulnerable with each other, we just the level how society will improve would be almost exponentially by just having those two things. Which, once again,
No,
I love that
I love
answer.
that hot take, and I agree. I think men can learn from women, and women can learn from men. Meaning, women, you could stop bullshitting your friends as much and be more honest and shoot them straight. Give them more criticism when they need it. If it's as long as it's actually constructive, you're not trying to tear them down. And then men, what we can learn from women is the frequency, the ability, how easily they are able to tap in. I got friends, man. They don't call me, but once every couple of years. When we do, we have these long conversations. But hey, dude, we got a phone plan, we got unlimited minutes. We can do this a lot more often. Whereas girls are so quick, they're so great at glazing each other and constantly reaching out and calling each other queens and stuff. Hey guys, let's start. Just call each other, hey king or whatever it is. And no, it's even funny. It makes us laugh just even joking about that. But we could absolutely we need to increase the frequency of lifting each other up. And I think some of the reason that women are blowing the doors off of men and almost categorically is in life successes and happinesses and graduation rates, and they're just killing it is because the way that they lift themselves up. Yes, a lot of times there's bullshit in there, and there's advanced 4D chess where they're mean, but they don't mean what they say. It's confusing, but there is a benefit on there as well. But I also do think, to start my early point, I do think it's harmful both for women as well to believe that they are true, queens. All of them are queens, which is just isn't possible. The same thing for guys. Hey, we're not all poppers or losers like our friends, jokingly tell us as well. So I think we could all, guys, we can use the increase our frequency and just see each other and acknowledge our friends and connect with them more often. And gals, a little more dose of reality and shooting them straight and honest with love would help us finally kind of see eye to eye more often.
Yeah, 100% agree. Because when you do that, you're distorting other people's realities and your own as well. And if you're a woman, if you think that you're a queen, that you're a 10 out of 10, and you have a
Yeah,
shitty personality, or you're overweight, or it's not like, well, fat shaming or body shaming, I don't care. It might be attractive for some people, it might not be attractive for some,
yeah,
for others. But when you have that reality, because your girls are telling you how attractive you are, how great you are, and all of that, you believe that,
yeah,
and then you go out there, and when you get rejected, I something wrong with them and not with you.
yeah.
And that's something that I think females do that to lower the competition. If you don't
Mm,
tell them what, that's a theory of being going around, because it's highly
mm,
competitive between women. That's a whole different story. That's another kind of
Who
warmth
knows,
that,
man? At
yeah,
4D chess, brother. Where they're on another level. We're playing checkers. We're
yeah.
just trying to play checkers, not eat the checker pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just trying to just make one move in an hour.
One
Well,
move
they're
it.
already just half already. Just yeah, great, Chris. Wish we could have more time. I had so many different other questions that I didn't have the time to ask you. Incredible
Do it again.
conversation. I definitely have to bring you back, because I think we only scratch the surface when it comes to emotional intelligence and dating. I think that dating has deeper problems, because if we didn't, we wouldn't be where we are right now as a society.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
awesome conversation. Have a pleasure. It was a pleasure having you on. But where can people find you, work with you, hire your services, anything?
Thanks, guys. Um, for anybody listening here, I think you're awesome. And I hope this goes out to the right people because if you're listening to Daniel and me, then you're on the same frequency that we are, and you're able to have these deep conversations and hang with us. Working with me, it's not that dissimilar from here, except it's more pointed, personal, bespoke, transformational work for each man's situation. So if you want to have a conversation with me, I'll give you a free complimentary session. We can chat for get a 30-minute call and go to consultantchris.com, consultantchris.com. Also, I'm on Instagram at consultantchris.com. I'm on Facebook, consultantchris.com, TikTok, consultantchris, YouTube, all those things. But yeah, please, do reach out, listen to this, and shoot me any questions that you have or situations that you're in, and I'll do my best to give you some pointed advice. And if I'm not the guy to help you, who knows, maybe I'm not. I have been doing this for quite a while. I'm a pretty good networker. I probably know somebody and can point you in the right direction to find the resources or the people or systems that'll help you get to where you want.
Awesome. That's perfect. Once again, Chris, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. That was a blast.